You are listening to a podcast series, Asking Soulful Questions, by Sacred Art of Living. To learn more, visit sacredartofliving.org. Today's podcast is a part of a series called The Question of Belief.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dara Williams, your host for this podcast series called Soul-Sized Questions. Today, we're coming to you from 3 different locations. I'm in Dewey, Arizona. Richard Groves, the founder and director of the Sacred Art of Living Center, is in Bend, Oregon. And Dara Molloy is in Inishmore, Ireland. Dara is a Celtic monk who teaches that the ancient path of mystical experience is inviting us back into harmony with nature. Today, he's going to help us explore how this wisdom can be a solution for our planetary crisis and a more tolerant world community as we reimagine the divine. Now, Richard, you know Dara personally. Why don't you kick this off?
All right. Thank you, Daryl, and thank you, Dara, for joining us today. I've got a copy of your book here, Reimagining the Divine, a Celtic Spirituality of Experience. And we've known each other. I've had some acquaintances over the years, and most recently invited you to be a guest with our Anam Cara program, a training program in Celtic spirituality. And I guess that's what connected us and what led me to bring groups to the Aran Islands and to Inishmore, where you've graciously given us some deep end history of Celtic culture. But I guess what we're most of all interested in today, whether or not a person knows anything about Celtic spirituality, is what I find in the back of your book, which is so fascinating. It's a topic that's showing up a lot. And it's one that opens up lots of conversation. The opening sentence says, the globalized belief in one God has become a problem. And I guess that's quite a controversial statement to throw out there for people. And maybe I'll just start there and see what you mean by that.
Yeah, what I've just been thinking today, Christianity in all its various forms has based itself on a set of beliefs, and different sections of Christianity have separated themselves from each other according to their own particular set of beliefs. And you find the same in quite a number of other dominant religions in the world, especially those who are monotheist, like Judaism or like Islam. So it's not just Christianity. And just think about it. They're trying to unite people around a uniform set of beliefs. Whereas the problem in the planet at the moment is diversity. And the challenge is, can we unify ourselves around respect for diversity instead of insisting that everybody be uniform? I think the day of forcing or trying to get people to be uniform is gone. And we now need to try to find a way to live together that respects diversity. Richard, you and I are probably a similar age, but we look different. And everybody in this planet of ours looks different and can be recognized as different by those who know them. So at the very heart of evolution is diversity. The planet and life on this planet wants diversity. And I'm saying that diversity is not just in the case of biodiversity, respecting all the other species that are alive on the planet, but also respecting diversity among ourselves and respecting diversity in our beliefs. So I would be saying to people, if other people believe something different from you, that's fine. In fact, I would say encourage people to be imaginative and creative, because my bottom line is none of us will ever fully understand. We're not made to fully understand this universe. We're made to survive on this planet, and we're given the various aptitudes and so on in order to be able to survive on this planet. But We don't need to understand why the universe exists or all these bigger questions. And I don't think we'll ever know the full answer. So let everybody have their own personal view and let's share them together. That's what I'd be saying.
Yeah.
You got, yeah, Richard and I were talking when he read me that back cover of your book, and I was just thinking, that is, I agree. I think that's a huge problem, but it's really fascinating to me that there seems to be a lot of blowback right now in the world. We see the rise of fascism in a number of countries and that kind of thing. And it's almost like there's a large group of people that really want more concrete answers. And when you're saying is almost the opposite of that, it's the answers aren't that important, but it seems like there is a real need in a lot of people for that.
Yeah, that's they're searching for a false security. I mean, at the heart of our lives in this world, we're insecure, and that's true of all living things. Like, I was out for a walk today, and I looked over a wall into a field, and I spotted a pheasant. You probably know pheasant in your part of the world.
Oh, yeah.
So this pheasant obviously suspected that I was around and had frozen onto the grass surface. He was acting as if he was completely invisible to me. And I was laughing over the wall at him saying, you're very bad at your hide and seek. I can totally see you. But this pheasant obviously, has to watch out for himself. He's insecure. And we're all insecure. We're not going to get security by some false set of beliefs. If we are, that's a false security.
And it seems like, what Dara was referring to, the blowback or whatever, maybe it's even understandable in a time of change and evolution like this. There's going to be a rise, conversely, in fundamentalism, sort of a retrenching into, in any of our monotheistic traditions, a point of view that is very black and white. And I noticed one of the themes in your book, which I've read actually many times. I've gone back to it and back to it. It's a great discussion starter that I find. That shift from the head, from belief to the heart, to experience. And then you use the term, which is used a lot these days, of mysticism, which is an emphasis, I think, ultimately on the primacy of experience encountering mystery. So maybe you could see where a person would go with that if they're hearing about this for the first time. What do you mean by mystic, I guess?
Yeah, and I think that's a real hopeful thing if we start considering that. Like until now, people have really relied on authority. They've relied on the Pope or the church or maybe the fascist leader or whoever to tell them what to do, what's right from wrong, what's the right way to go. And I believe that hasn't worked out very well for people. But here is something you can be sure of. You can be sure of your own experience, and nobody can take that from you. And I can only speak about my own experience. And in my own experience, I regularly experience things that make me feel wonder, or make me feel awe, or make me feel that there's something out there beyond which I will never understand it. And I go out for a walk at least twice a day into the countryside in order to experience that. And it can be the tide coming in and out. It can be the variety of birds flying around me and beautiful singing of them this evening as I came in. It can be the flower that has suddenly bloomed. I mean, they're just, and you can go on and on and on with the list of things that can cause us awe or wonder or magic even, or mystery. And they are our personal experiences. Nobody can take them from us. And then we can decide how to interpret those experiences ourselves. And again, that's up to us to do. And we're free to do it. Nobody should be able to tell us what our experience means or doesn't mean. Maybe they can help us understand it. Maybe they can help us, I don't know, get some light on the subject. But ultimately, we can decide what the experiences mean to us. And that's what I'd be encouraging people to do, and to see in these experiences of mystery and wonder the presence of the divine. And by that, I mean the presence of a greater power, something beyond us. We don't have to put a face on it. We don't have to put a name on it other than divine or greater power. And we certainly don't have to give it a gender.
Right. Yeah, it makes me think, Dara, that, we, Richard and I, and where we live, we are blessed with easy access to the outdoors. And I find the same experience that when I'm out, I feel connected. And that seems to be a big challenge for a lot of people, that sense of disconnected. And I wonder if it immediately thought about, do cities bring about more of that sense of disconnection? But ultimately, how do you think that experience helps us connect with each other?
Well, first of all, let me say why I believe so many people in the world today feel disconnected, and why that disconnection has led to climate change and led to the reduction of biodiversity. If you, as a whole community of human beings, believe in a God that lives up in the sky in heaven, then you have put the sacred outside of this earth. And therefore, this earth becomes for you something that doesn't have a sacred presence. And because it doesn't have a sacred presence, you don't have to respect it. It's there maybe for your use, which is the way we have approached the environment and other species. They're there for our use. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you take the approach that the divine is right here in our midst, it's inside you and it's inside me, and it's in my dogs, it's in our animals, it's in our plants, it's everywhere, and we can experience it. We don't just have to believe it with our heads. Then there's a whole new relationship developing with everything else in nature. That's based on respect and on a sense of the sacred in our midst. And that has to change our behavior. It may mean that we won't live in cities anymore. I don't know what it's going to mean in the future, but I know I benefit hugely from living in the countryside.
Yeah. So that kind of going back to your use of the term experience, I'm weaving together mystic, not in some sense of it's ordinary mysticism. It feels like to me, it's a mysticism that is an encounter with experience and a leading to trusting it. So how do we respond to the, I guess, people from inside deeply institutional religion, who would say, well, that's fine. Everybody's out there, billions of people trusting their own experience. But ultimately, there's also got to be a common coming together of those experiences that does create community and gives us ritual and history and so forth. So how do we bridge that gap?
Well, I think we're all inclined to want to be in community with others. And I think if we practice recognizing the divine in each other, and that will draw us towards each other. And it'll also allow us to respect the diversity among us, and maybe celebrate and even delight in the fact that other people are different to me and I'm different from them, and have a sort of an atmosphere of acceptance rather than of judgment. So I think this approach, this mystical approach, is only going to help build community, whereas the approach of only hanging out with people who believe the same thing as myself is a divisive thing, and is not conducive to community.
Mm-hmm. You and I, you're right, we're about the same age. I think we have a number of things in common in our background. We were both ordained Catholic priests, and were raised so deeply in that tradition and that theology. And then we find ourselves at this stage of life continuing to be deeply involved in issues of spirituality and so forth. But I guess I'd like to bring it back more personally and see if there's something you might be willing to share about how in your own journey, I know I have mine, how I moved not away from, but found an opening into something in this second part of my life that wouldn't have been so in my seminary theology years.
Yeah, I think it's to do with being true to our own calling. That's not something that was emphasized for me while I was training to be a Catholic priest, other than my calling was to be a priest. But it didn't try to identify exactly what my calling was, just to be a priest. And but I think that's very important for us to be so much in tune with ourselves, or to practice tuning into ourselves, if you like, to learn what it is precisely we are being called to. Because if you, Richard, are different from me, surely there's a purpose to that. And surely the purpose is that your life has to be different from mine. And I believe that each of us can find our purpose in life. The Celtic monks have taught me that, because they used to call it their place of resurrection. They wandered in the earlier part of their lives. They moved around from monastery to monastery and place to place. Some of them traveled all over Europe. But in general, they were looking for what they called their place of resurrection. They were looking for the moment in their lives when they found what they were looking for, when they found who they really were and what they were meant to do with the rest of their lives. And I found that when I came to the Aran Islands. And looking back, I was definitely looking for it at the time, but I was fairly lost and I wasn't sure what to do. I had been 3 years a Roman Catholic priest, so I was now sort of fully fledged, and I was so unhappy. I was unhappy with my lifestyle, living in a community of other priests. So there were 14 of us, having people cook my meals and wash my clothes and all that sort of thing. That just didn't appeal to me at all. And neither did the work that I was being asked to do appeal to me, to teach in a very institutionalized educational system. So none of that appealed to me. And I was searching, I suppose, for how can I go forward? I had gone to the doctor about it, and the doctor had said, look, if you continue the way you're going to end up like some of the older priests in your community. You're going to be on sleeping tablets at night and tranquilizers during the day. And I could see that ahead of me, because I could see some of the older priests in exactly that situation. So what was I to do? And just by chance, and I think this is the way life sometimes works, that it's like the wall that's surrounding you, suddenly a break comes in it, or a crack comes in it, or a door opens, whatever way you want to put it. But suddenly you find there's an opening for you. And I found that by accident when I brought a group of young people that I was working with in a prayer group for a holiday to the Aran Islands, where I now live. And when I came here, I was only on a holiday with the kids. It was summertime, we were going to camp out in a field, and we were going to go swimming, and we're going to cook our meals, and we're going to go for walks. And that was what it was all about. But I saw right around me here on the island the remains of monastic ruins, old churches, Celtic crosses, holy wells, and places where saints were buried, and people were going to honor the saints' graves. And my imagination started to run, and my imagination was saying to me, wouldn't it be a great thing if you could come to this island and live like the way those monks lived? And that really appealed to me in lots and lots of ways. And from then on, I was fixated on that idea until 2.5 years later, I actually got here to live, and I never looked back since. It was definitely my moment, and my place of resurrection is definitely here. And for me, it was also a discovery of who I am. Until then, I didn't feel right. I was ordained a priest, and I thought that's what I was meant to be, but certainly not to be in the lifestyle that I was living. That wasn't how I was meant to be a priest. So I wanted to see if I could be a priest outside of any church institution. And I think I've succeeded in doing it, because that's most of my work now today. I do to say to people is that there's a destiny out there for you. There's a calling out there for you. There's the best way for you to live out there. And it's well worth your while searching for it. because
I don't think I've ever heard in all my hanging out with you and reading things about Celtic spirituality, that term of resurrection.
oh yeah,
So that's just spectacular because that's so non-dogmatic. That's
oh yeah,
about the individuality of the individual spending that first part of life, which is pretty natural and needed, searching, going to places, going to others' authority. And then finally something comes through that. And as you're describing your experience, I just resonate with it. For me, with a similar background, it was in working in hospice as a chaplain, working with the dying. It's funny to think that resurrection would happen at the
yeah,
deathbed of those who were dying, but that's what liberated me. I just realized that all of the answers that I had been
yeah,
given were not the ones that people most needed when they were breathing their last, but that there was something from my priesthood and from my experience that I could bring to people that was very valuable. And I found such joy in that eventually this Sacred Art of Living Center grew out of it. So what a wonderful thing, though, to be able to maybe be at our age mentors or elders to people who are in the earlier stages, just starting to search and wondering if they can trust that.
yeah, yeah. My daughter is just back from a 6-week trip to Asia. She visited 7 or 8 different countries, and I can see that it had a profound effect upon her. And I would encourage young people to wander physically. It's not the only way we can wander. We can wander in our minds too, or we can wander through reading various books or meeting various people. There's lots of different ways we can wander, but wandering for young people, I definitely encourage it, because you won't discover who you really are unless you're prepared to, I suppose, get out there, make yourself a little bit uncomfortable, make yourself a little bit vulnerable. Allow life to come at you, and allow yourself to experience the fullness of life, as Jesus said. I find Jesus so right in so many things that he said. You know, you can read through the Gospels really quickly and think, well, what's there? But there's so many phrases, so many little things he said.
Kind of in that same territory here, aren't we?
Yeah. I don't dismiss Jesus at all. In fact, I still think he's probably the best source of wisdom that we can find in written form in the 4 Gospels.
Again, I think what we experience in these discussions is a great, a piece is the right word, but a deepening of what it means to search and look for the answers. So I look forward to having you join us as we continue this conversation with Dara Molloy.
We would like to thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Question of Belief. For more information about our entire podcast library, Asking Soulful Questions, visit our website at sacredartofliving.org.